South African consumers are under pressure due to the cost of living, the higher interest rates, and there's been a slew of complaints about the repossession of cars by banks. The Ombudsman for Banking Services says it's necessary to clarify the rights of both consumers and the banks in these circumstances. So to discuss, we're now joined by the Ombud, Reana Steyn. Ms. Steyn, thank you for being with us. The first thing you've said is, you've reminded us that if you're paying off a car, you don't actually own it, right?
Good afternoon. Yes, that's correct. So if you finance the vehicle through the bank in this case, the bank remains the legal owner of that vehicle until the day that you've made the final payment. And I think some consumers are not aware of that, and others forget about that, and they think that that they actually the owner of the car, and that they can do as they deem fit, even if they stop paying.
So, looking at the complaints, in most cases, have the banks been within their rights to repossess if people don't pay, or are they being repossession happy? Are they flouting the rules? We have seen matters where the bank could not prove to us that they followed the correct legal process, and then in other cases they did follow the legal process, and the consumer, still wanted just our assistance in this process because they don't know what's happening, they don't know what their rights are, or they wanted us to check whether the amounts that's involved and that's calculated by the bank is correct. So we have seen instances, but it's not a case when we say that there's quite an increase in the matter of repossessions. It's not because the banks are suddenly doing a whole lot of illegal stuff. I think it's just a matter of consumers being under stress and not being able to keep up with their repayments. What is the process? I mean, how much grace do the banks usually give people before they have to start paying if they're skipping a few payments? And then what is the exact process that they should follow?
Okay, so every bank will have their own internal procedure for collections. So there's not one standard, 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. But I think we all know that the banks are pretty good that if there's a skipped payment, that they will try and contact you. But then, of course, you do find that some consumers, they avoid those calls. They don't answer numbers that they don't know, so that then they don't know about the call. Some people don't read the emails, and then others have changed telephone numbers, changed email addresses, and even changed addresses. So that's also something to bear in mind, because we do get the complaints that people say the bank never contacted me, but then the consumer never changed their contact details or updated it. So internally, they can take only 1 month or 2 months before they start contacting the consumer, asking them to settle up the debt, especially the arrears, and make arrangements for future. Then the process is that they need to at least send you a Section 129 letter before they can take legal action in terms of the National Credit Act. So often that is a matter that's in dispute. Was this letter sent to the consumer? Was it sent to the correct address? And we do look into that. Then some consumers say that they never received the summons. We will look whether the service of the summons, whether that process happened correctly. Next thing, there's a judgment. Consumers don't know about the judgment, but of course, if they never received the summons, they won't know about the judgment. So we look back into the whole process, whether the bank followed the correct process. And a matter can get all the way to judgment, and even a warrant of execution for that vehicle without the consumer being aware, because they were, sort of, as I say, changed their address, and therefore they never got any of the notices, and they were maybe, say, avoiding the calls, or they changed their number. So the best thing to do is, of course, make sure that the bank always has your up-to-date details. But even better is for the consumer to contact the bank the minute they see there's a problem and they cannot pay, so that they don't get to this legal process and the extra legal costs, because the end result is definitely to the detriment of the consumer. They'll be listed on the credit bureau, they will have extra legal costs, there'll be interest added to this account for the period of non-payment, and they will still maybe lose the vehicle, because the bank will have the right to come and collect that vehicle.
So I think that is the warning that we just want to sound to consumers who are struggling at the moment.
That's good advice. I think we often don't think of updating our details if we move with all the institutions that we deal with. And you can't do much. Look, if the banks are within their rights, you can't do anything. But if consumers are being treated unfairly or feel that they are, I guess it's good to know that you are there.
Correct. So, we can help consumers in any matters relating to the bank, but we have been receiving a lot of calls, according to my call center, about vehicle repossessions, about people being unable to pay their debts, and also about people thinking that their claim, the matters have prescribed. So they've heard about prescription because also our office have issued press releases on that, the claim of the bank prescribes after 3 years. So consumers think that, they haven't heard from the bank for 3 years, they've stopped paying. So now this vehicle suddenly belongs to them. And then we have to give them the news that no, unfortunately, you're still not the owner of the vehicle. Yes, the bank's claim for the money has prescribed, but they still have a right to that vehicle because it's their property. So we've been receiving those calls. And then I think I need to just add that the consumer always has the right, in terms of the National Credit Act, to voluntarily surrender the vehicle. So this is a process for the benefit of the consumer who sees there's going to be a problem, that he can give back the vehicle, he can get out of this contract with the minimal extra legal fees. The vehicle can be sold very quickly before it loses value and before the interest just piles up. And, if there's a shortfall, it will be a very small shortfall. But it's an opportunity for the consumer to resolve this matter of a debt that they cannot repay. So often case, that's much better option than keeping on driving the vehicle, not paying for it, and a year down the line, it's sold on auction with legal fees, and then, of course, the balance of the vehicle and the value of the vehicle, there's a huge gap, and the consumer still needs to pay, and they don't even have a vehicle to drive. So I think consumers need to know that there is an out. Yes.
So there's voluntary surrender, but you have said nobody can be pushed into that. It has to be voluntary. You can't be threatened or anything like that. Very quickly, the prescription period, after which the claim is prescribed, you've explained, but why is it there? It could encourage some people to wait for 3 years, but I'm sure all the implications are still there, your bad credit record, the legal implications, and like you say, the car is still owned by the bank.
Correct. So definitely, even though the claim may have prescribed, that's, like a debatable benefit, but it will be listed on the bureau. The bank itself will have all that information, and they can still obviously reclaim their asset because it belongs to them. And then if there's legal costs in that process to get the vehicle back, you can then be liable for those costs. So definitely prescription in very, very few circumstances will benefit a consumer. It is possible that they just for 3 years did nothing, but we haven't seen many of those matters where for a period of 3 years there's absolutely been no action and even no interaction with the consumer where they acknowledged the debt or made a single payment.